Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the next episode of Behind Enemy Lines Hockey Podcast. Today, we're going to do things a little bit different. We're just going to have an open forum discussion, and whatever rolls across our brain, we're going to talk about it. So hang in there. This could be a long one. As always, I'm joined by my friend, fellow Habs fan, and fellow Schwigadite, and newest grandpa, Steve.
Yes, well, a new Hab fan has joined the clan. I can proudly announce my daughter gave birth to a middle linebacker, a 9 pound, 6 ounce stud defense woman the other day. So the family is growing, as is the Habs community. So good to be here. It's been a busy couple of days, but Habs hockey is hot, and let's dig in.
Okay, so we're gonna get it going with our trivia question as always, uh, and we're gonna tie it in. We talked previously episode about what we think it was gonna take for Montreal to get into the playoffs. We both figured it was gonna take 100 points and what we had to do to down the stretch to get there, and it seems we've virtually done it, and that's gonna tie into today's trivia question, correct?
Correct. So, that 100 point, it's like a goal scorer, like Mr. Caulfield scoring 50 is a benchmark. The 100 point team amount is a benchmark. So, we'll keep it simple 100 points. When was the last time the Montreal Canadiens had a team total of 100 points or more?
Okay, excellent. I didn't even take a guess at this one. I wouldn't even try to guess. Um, so with that, we're gonna just dive right into today's topics, plural, because we're just gonna, we're gonna talk about the 6 game streak we're on, Caulfield's 50, potential 20 goal scorers, all the stuff that's going on, the points. We're gonna talk a little bit about Jack Eye getting a shot on forward. So I think we'll just go right to you, Steve. Which topic do you want to hit first?
Well, that 100 point, we'll continue with that. The 100 points. This has been an anomaly type of year. So when you look at the West, you and I were just discussing that Edmonton, for example, they're on a 4 game winning streak. That gives them 85 points. If they were in the East, they're locked into a second spot right now in their division. But they jump over into the East. They're tied with Washington, 5 spots out of a wild card. So nowhere even close to a playoff spot. The 100 points has been the East in a nutshell. Right now, we're a big win over Tampa last night, 4-1, a little bit of a chippy affair. But that gives us a 6 game winning streak. We're trucking along at 96 points with 8 games left ish. And, that 100 points is definitely a barrier.
Mhm.
But how do we get there? The Eastern Conference is stacked and jacked. Buffalo's 100 points. Tampa's 98. We're 96. One team loses 2 games and they could be in the second wildcard spot. That's how tight this is. That's why that 100 points is so rare this year to think that 100. We squeaked in last year with 90. There
Yeah,
are teams that could hit 100 this year and not make the playoffs
yeah,
in the
that's
Eastern
scary.
Conference.
That's scary. I know, like,
And
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that comes on the backs of a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, and the sun, the moon, the stars align. We are coming off a 6 game winning streak
Mhm.
at a time where, you and I have criticized the coaching staff and whatnot on how they truck a lineup out there. But let's give credit where credit's due. Marty seems to be making all the right decisions at this point in the season because
Well,
we haven't beaten the New Jerseys and
that's what I was just gonna
and
say. Yeah,
the Torontos at this point. In Chicago, we are beating teams that are in the playoffs.
yeah. Well, three of the six that we've just won on our 60, two are against Carolina, who's they're a serious team. They're 100 points,
Leading
and
their other division.
yeah, and we just beat Tampa, who is a team where I guess chasing, you would say, for that higher spots, and you know, there's no reason why we can't catch Tampa and Buffalo. Really.
No, and I mean we still have a game against Tampa,
Uh,
and that could be the one that is a position marker for the playoff seedings. But they put up an interesting stat. TSN, I don't like to give them tons of credit, but I guess when the make me laughs don't play, I don't even know if they played a lot this year, but participated maybe. But when they put up a stat last night, because it was a pretty important matchup, the statistic was who has the most wins against teams that are in a playoff spot right now? Believe it or not, Colorado leads the pack at 23. There was somebody else, I think Dallas was there at 23. Montreal and Tampa were tied at 21.
Mhm.
Now, we won the game last night, so we now have the third most amount of wins against teams in a playoff spot. So we're not beating up on the low, we're not beating up on
Yeah.
the dumpster fires that are around the league. We're beating up on the teams that are competing and ahead of us in the standings.
Mhm.
And you can't take that as simple numbers.
Mhm.
It's beyond the numbers,
Okay, well, let's jump
right?
the gun a little bit here. Maybe you don't know, and maybe it's not fair to ask, but right now, as it stands right now, like we say, if playoffs started tomorrow, we would be playing Tampa. We have a winning record against them this year, do we not?
No, we are 3 games in. They won the first two, and we won last night with the
Okay,
fourth game coming next week.
okay, yeah.
But we had it.
So,
They beat us up, and then they have an overtime win against us, and then we have the big win last night. So
last night, yeah.
two of the three, one of that could have been in either way. We have played them very well. The one stat that they put up again on TSN last night was Vasilevsky in his career is 16 wins, 4 losses, and 1 tie against Montreal.
Ouch.
Those are staggering numbers,
Yeah. There's certain
right?
teams, it
Now,
seems certain
that
teams and
comes on
certain
the
players come to town and they're just Montreal killers for some reason.
well, don't forget, Vasi being a goalie and Tampa's been on quite a run in the last decade.
Mhm.
We haven't been the strongest team. And when you play them 4 times, it doesn't take too many years to build up 16 wins.
I guess, yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and let's hope that that trend continues. And maybe Cooper won't show his hand because the return game, I believe, is in Montreal,
Mhm.
where we get the last line change. So maybe that game we don't play against Vasi. Maybe they hold him out just to play the mind game because Cooper's all about that.
Yeah.
There's a reason he's coached in this league with one franchise as long as he has. They've won a lot of games.
Mhm.
He's been on the Canadian coaching staff for years because he's well respected by the players. But maybe it's a mind over matter scenario in that last game next week.
Yeah. So I think it's safe to say, again, 96 points, 8 games left. We're in, right? It's just a matter of where the final seats are going to be.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think the magic number is 2 or 3, if I'm not mistaken. I think 2 gets us in with tiebreakers, 3 gets us in. That means a combination of Montreal wins and or Philadelphia, Detroit, Ottawa losses.
mhm,
Ottawa pulled up just an absolute shitbag of an effort last night with Allmark and net. Gave up 5 goals on 13 shots in the first period, so or
mhm,
5 goals on 9 shots. I mean, he's he must have been watching the Sam Montembeault training videos because he definitely did us a favor. Um, but we have a home and home coming up against New Jersey. We have a game against Philadelphia.
mhm,
We have another one against Tampa, one against Florida. Florida's now got 8 guys on injured reserve where they're shut down for the rest of the year. So
mhm,
I think I think one game against the Rangers as well. So
mhm.
we have a decent schedule, but if anything has been proven in the Eastern Conference and in the Atlantic Division, you got to win the games when they're in front of you, and you
Yeah.
can't let them get away from you.
Yeah. You got to take advantage of the points. You can't let them slip away. Um, so that pretty much I think that pretty much covers the discussion on points and standings and where we get to, unless there's something I've missed that you wanted to talk
Yeah,
about.
I just want to add one sort of stat. We struggled as a team early in the year, and where do we struggle? There was a couple of things that we identified, right? Like every other armchair quarterback, general manager, our penalty kill was terrible.
Mhm.
It seems to have gotten a lot better in the last 10 games, but our goaltending has been impeccable since the Olympic break.
Oh.
I think in the last 5 games we've given up 5 goals.
Mhm.
You are going to win a lot of hockey games when you keep the puck out of your own net.
Mhm.
You
And they've
know,
always done well scoring, always been in the high 3 point, 3.7,
yeah,
3.6. So that's never been an issue. It's tightening up the defense.
right. In his last 4 games, Jakub Dobish has got 4 wins. He's given up 4 goals while stopping like 142 of 146 shots. So when you get a goalie on a good young goalie on a run,
Hmm.
um, confidence is everything, and the team settles in. They become that really really fun team to watch. Our transitional game has been fantastic, and we have now. If you look up the goals against department, we were like bottom six almost all year. We're right in the middle of the pack. There's now 10 teams behind us.
Yeah. Well, I just
So
looked it up. I just looked it up. I think the last time we actually discussed this on an episode, a month ago, I think we were in like 23rd or 24th in goals against. Right now, we're 12th goals against.
yeah,
20,
we have
29.
climbed up into the middle of the pack. And again,
Yeah.
like I said, we threw up a shit brick of a week where we gave
Yeah.
up like 7 goals and 8 goals, and then we lost 4 games and gave up like 26 goals.
Yeah.
We'd be right there in the middle. Those 4 games, that don't say they're 4 wins, but they build on the momentum of coming out of those. So could we be at 100 points already and in the top 8 in goals against average? It very well could have been, but here we are.
Well,
Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
here's my thing. I said it before and I'll say it again. I mean, we've both discussed it, but I've been on the, you know, Axe Monty bandwagon for 3 months now, since probably before Christmas, and I could never understand it. You've heard me say it before. Is it he's a French Canadian kid? Are they giving him benefit of the doubt? What did we say we were at now? 98 points, 96 points,
96 points.
96 points, right? With the number of games that Monty played, say we had had half of them points, we'd be first place in the division. We'd be up there in
With
Colorado
Colorado.
numbers, right?
Yeah.
So at 96 points, if we had had 4 wins out of that, we're easily up that way. 5 wins.
And clinched.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And clinched, which is even more important because now you can start experimenting with things like
Well, you can
Jack Eye as a
experiment,
forward, that type of thing.
or he could do workload management, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And those are the things. And we talk about what are important factors going down the stretch. You touch base it on the intro. We had an interesting scenario rear its ugly head this week where Josh Anderson is out sick. We're on a road trip. Texier's out. Where we have to make a decision. Arbor Jackeye dresses as a seventh defenseman, but is used for like 5.5 minutes as a forward.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about this. I think we even discussed it once in an episode where I said, "Hey, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Why don't we have a hybrid unicorn?
Yeah.
Because then you always have you have the sheriff factor in the game more often."
Mhm.
Let's be honest. That game got chippy last night, but it didn't get unruly chippy because Arbor had skates on.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter if he's on the ice; he has skates on.
Well, I'll tell you what
Teams
needs to
aren't.
happen. I'll tell you what needs to happen, especially if we can clinch early enough. I think you need to call up Florian for a couple games. You put Florian Jacki at center and you put Arbor on one wing and Anderson, I think he's out a little bit right now, but it's only day to day. But by the end of the year, you put him on the other wing, you get the Jacki brothers and Anderson on a line. That's a line that's going to go out and do some punishment and, drive up some, what do they call that? Some momentum for a team that's potentially lethal and would uh, would thrive in a playoff format, I think.
Could we then petition the NHL to have Montreal Chiefs jerseys and allow them to put foil on? Because
Yeah,
that's what it would
tape
be.
on the glasses.
Like
Yeah,
it would be one of those one of those exciting shifts. I mean, you wouldn't must see TV.
yeah,
You don't go get a popcorn refill that shift.
yeah.
Um, but he had 5 hits in 5 minutes.
Mhm,
And when you see the clips, he was in on the forecheck, laying the body.
mhm,
Defensemen know he's coming. They know he's a big, heavy-bodied player.
mhm,
He was effective. Marty said he was extremely effective in what he did. That being the case, are we going to see more of that? I could see it down the stretch.
mhm,
Workload management. We get a playoff spot. You want to keep guys going. Now, that maybe gets curtailed with the Carrier injury. Carrier's
mhm.
out 2 to 4 weeks with an upper body injury. We got a couple weeks left in the season. So is it precautionary that they're keeping him out of the lineup? So Engstrom was recalled. Now you got Struble and Jackeye playing. That's great because these games are going to be tough down the stretch. Physically tough, I'm saying.
Yeah,
Not tough as in opponent. There might
yeah,
be that too. But, when we have more guys on there that can defend the back end, and stick up for themselves, we are a better team. And you saw it in the last couple of games. Lane Hudson dropped his gloves and tried to jump somebody. Now that's like putting on your backpack and going to work. Yeah, I don't think anybody noticed he was there, but at least he showed that if Arbor's going to do it, if Galley's going to do it, if Anderson's going to do it, I better be in on this as well. So,
Yeah.
just everybody buys in at that level where it's the logo on the front, not the name on the back, and they're going to do it tooth and nail.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned the schedule, what's left. It just made me think about it for a minute of what we got coming up here. So just so we know and everybody else knows, if you don't already know, we got tomorrow night against the Rangers, Saturday, New Jersey, then Sunday, New Jersey again, Tuesday, Florida, next Thursday, um, Tampa, which is pretty much really, in my opinion, really the only tough game I would say left. Then next Saturday, Columbus, Sunday, Islanders, and then to close out the season, uh, Tuesday, 2 weeks from now, against the Flyers. So I see the one game against Tampa as a red light, maybe. The Columbus game, I think, might be a little bit tough too because they're fighting for a wild card spot and they got a lot to prove. So, but I don't want to say we got a cakewalk schedule, but I think we have an easier schedule that helps us in the long run.
We have a beneficial schedule where
Beneficial, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
we played all these playoff teams in this 6 game winning streak. And just for the record, as I did share with you before, I made the suggestion, fans, that my daughter call her little bundle of joy 5 game winning streak.
Mhm.
That was shot down. Just I want to put that out there.
Probably pretty
You know,
quickly.
yeah, pretty quickly. Yes, faster than a loss. Yes, but we have beat good teams in this winning streak. So when you look at the teams that we're playing in the next 5 games, they're all teams below us in the standings. It doesn't mean they're cakewalk games. It just means that if we play full throttle against those teams, 1 foot on the gas, one on their throats, we should come away with four wins easy out of those 5 games.
Mhm.
We should be cemented before we get to Tampa, before we get to Columbus. We should be locked into a playoff spot by then,
That would be
which
great. And
which
I'm
takes that load management issue off the team.
Yeah, and I just brought up, and I'm going to do the same here. I just brought up Buffalo schedule. So Buffalo has, I'm not going to go into all the details, but they've got Ottawa, Washington, Tampa, Rangers, Columbus, Chicago, and Dallas to finish the year. So they've got a few tough games coming up. So we have a more favorable schedule than them. And I'm just going to bring up Tampa here real quick. Their schedule, they've got Pittsburgh, Boston, Buffalo, Ottawa, us, Boston, Detroit, and Rangers. So I think they've got some harder games too. So the
They have
schedule is
they have
definitely in our
one
favor.
Yeah, they have one game that's against a much weaker opponent. And let's be honest, as long as the wild card race stays open, more teams are in this. Those games are tougher for Tampa,
Yeah,
and they're tougher for Buffalo.
because they're still wanting to
Yeah, I mean
get in,
Washington
right?
is Washington is 3 points out of a playoff spot.
Yeah,
Ovi's cooking. He had another hat trick last night, gives him another 30-goal season. He's
yeah,
had 20 30-goal seasons.
that's
Hats
crazy.
off to him.
Yeah.
I still don't like the gap tooth bastard, but
Mhm.
hats off to him, because as Ovi goes, the Capitals go. So those games down the stretch, they mean a lot to a lot of teams.
Yeah,
So
and
until
they're going to
until
be
you start
fighting. They're going to be fighting like that, like the
each
old.
other,
Yeah, but the old adage you talk about the most dangerous animal is an animal with nothing to lose, right? These teams are going to be the same way. It's all or nothing for, like you say, Philly, Detroit, Ottawa, Washington, that are the four fighting for that last wild card spot, right? And Columbus and Boston holding those two spots are going to be fighting to stay in there. So there's going to be
and they
no
playing each
cakewalks.
other.
There's
Mo-
no cakewalks playing those
yeah,
teams.
yeah. So we've got a lot of those games out of the way. We have a couple late, and
Mhm.
let's be honest, if we come down to the last couple of games against Columbus and Philly and we don't make the playoffs, we didn't deserve to be there. If
Yeah,
if we lose out at that point,
it's
we
our
have
own
done all
fault.
the hard work.
Yeah.
Now we need to put the icing on that cake. And I
Yeah.
love cake, by the way.
Well, and the advantage, I think, too, uh, looking at the other side of that same coin is Montreal's got the the drive to win for a couple reasons. Obviously, as everybody, they want to win, for the fans and for themselves. But you got some players that are trying to get some milestones. You got Caulfield's trying to get 50. Uh, I see Suzuki getting 40. I see we talked about it earlier. We have the potential to have what was it, four or five 20 goal scorers. Would you say
Right?
we
Yeah.
you mentioned to
Right
me
now we
earlier
have
we've got 11
11,
players,
11 players with 10 or more goals.
right?
We could have three guys with 30 goals,
Yeah.
right? Suzuki's got 27, Slav's got 29, Caulfield's got 47. We could have a 50 goal scorer. Suzuki's 8 points away from 100.
Hmm.
And Hudson is every time he piles on another assist is setting defenseman records.
Yeah.
So, and then on top of that, it doesn't seem like much and it's often forgotten. We have Demidov that's right now in the driver's seat for rookie points.
Yeah.
And then you have Dobish, who's leading all rookies in goalie wins. And theoretically, he's got more wins this rookie season than Carey Price had in his rookie season.
Yeah.
So, the sun,
With
the moon, and the
with
stars.
with probably three or four more games to play yet, too.
Yeah. Yeah. So he could, theoretically, we have 8 games left. Does Dobish play five and win them all? He could hit 30
Yeah.
wins. So there's some definitely attainable milestones on a personal level,
Yeah.
but
Which
that's
was
the
my
fuel.
point, which is going to drive the team more to do
Yeah.
better because they want to achieve them
Yeah.
personal milestones.
Yeah. The personal milestones help achieve the team milestones, right?
Yeah.
They have two reasons to play now, not one. They have two reasons.
Hmm.
Um, I thought it was very, captain class, Mr. Suzuki last night. He strips a puck, blocks a puck, gets an empty net, he fires home. Poor Caulfield was out there with one empty net in his career. He has no empty net goals. He had a chance at an empty netter, and Suzuki took it away from him, fired the puck in the net, which cemented the win 4-1. But his post game press conference, he says, "Yeah, maybe I'm going to have to make it up to him." Like he acknowledged that he just didn't want to make the mistake. He wanted to put this to bed, get it all over and done
Hmm.
with. But Cole could have finally got that monkey off his back because not often Caulfield's on the ice with an empty net late in the game.
Hmm. Well, I
It's
watched.
rare.
I remember I was telling you about. I watched the podcast earlier. I think it was the TSN one where they had talked about uh, what Montreal's got coming. The current players, the upcoming roster, and they had talked about this topic of Caulfield and his 50 goals or whatever. Apparently, the story they're telling is that uh, Caulfield and St. Louis had a discussions about the 50 goals and playing time and stuff like that. And Caulfield himself said, "Look, I want to get the 50 goals, don't get me wrong." He goes, "But I want players when we're up 4-1, 5-1, 3-1, and we got the game at hand and it's down to, 2 or 3 minutes left and we need the win." He goes, "I'm okay sitting, get the players out there that we need to close out the game, right?" Which is again, this is another mentality of logo on the front, not the name on the back. And he says part of it too is I don't want to get the 50 on a pile of empty net goals. I want to do it clean, is the word they use. I want to earn it and earn it the right way by scoring, meaningful goals like we talked about earlier. Austin Matthews, half of the goals he scored at the beginning of the season were on empty netters, right? And we razzed him about that, right? So I just think it's a pretty important thing for people to understand that these players have pride as well in what they're doing and how they're doing it, right? So I just think it's a great thing that Caulfield understands, he's on a 50 goal chase, but he thinks it's more important that his teammates get the playing minutes and the team wins before he gets his 50.
Yeah, I think I mean, let's be honest, 47, you get a couple games. I mean, you hope that one of these games against New Jersey is a 3, 4, 5 goal win and he gets a couple of them and he only needs one goal. I would love him to be the first player to score 50 goals with zero empty net goals.
Mhm.
That would just be astronomical because we know Gretzky got a shit ton of empty netters. He's second in history in empty net goals behind Ovi, and we know Ovi got a bunch of them. Um, and they all count. It doesn't matter whether there's a goalie there. It doesn't matter if it's a
Yeah.
power play goal. I mean, we can't say, this guy has the most 5-on-5 goals, so he's a better goal scorer. Look, you get the same stat if you score with a goalie in, no players on the ice, do it blindfolded with a milkshake in your back pocket. It doesn't matter. You still score, you score. And that's the most important thing. But like you said, team mentality first over individual accolade. And this just goes to show the maturity. We are still the youngest team in the NHL. And we got guys thinking like 20-year veterans that they just want to win. So if he's not meant to get his 50, but the team makes the playoffs and does well, that's what he cares about. That's all I care about.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would love to see the 50 goals.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm.
Oh yeah.
It just be the icing on a great season.
Yeah,
To
and
you
I
know,
think everybody would agree with you, the players as well. They want him to get it, but I just wanted to mention it because I just thought it was an interesting fact that, like, let's be honest, you would never, and I'm not just saying this to trash the Leafs, but you would never hear Austin Matthews make that comment. You would never
no,
hear him
no,
say, "Hey, I want my team, I want my teammates to earn their minutes," because he knows guys like Deneau and Gallagher and all them guys that are playing lower minutes, that they're the grinders, they're the defensive guys, they're the ones that are going to win the games and close it out. You would never hear him giving their flowers and say, hey, look, put them on the ice. We need them to win. Let's let them do their job and close it out and give them their minutes. You'd never hear Austin Matthews say that. You'd never hear
no,
Austin
no,
Matthews say, hey, I'll sacrifice my, what did he get there? 60 goal season there last year, whatever it was, 60, 70. You'd never hear him say, sacrifice that for the good of the team. Never. You'd never hear him say it.
no. And that's the difference, right? And again, for anybody who didn't see it, Google it, go on YouTube, find the Keith Pelly press conference after they fired
Oh,
their
it was
general manager
glorious.
after 3 years. Here's the president and CEO of the Maple Leafs, our biggest rival, giving kudos to the Montreal Canadiens and as much as it pains me to say this, the North Tonawanda dumpster fires,
Yeah.
They got a compliment as well from Keith Pelly saying
Yeah.
the difference between the three franchises is two of them have cultures and identities. One team doesn't, and it's that team that thinks they're Canada's team doesn't have an identity. The identity is right now is they lose a lot. That's the identity, and it's a me first mentality. I suspect we'll just dive into this quickly. I suspect that even though Pelly has given Berube his just desserts, I think last game of the year they tell him thanks for the season and thanks for time to move on, and they let the new guy come in and not have to fire a guy and hire a guy. He'll just be able to hire a guy. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that
it typically
but
happens that way. New GMs always
yeah
bring in their own guys, right? They're not gonna, go off of everybody else. I don't want to say garbage, but that's another GM's pick. They've got
yeah
their own guys they want to bring in.
he's a lame duck, but
Yeah.
that enough of that. Like I said, I go back. I'll give Marty St. Louis and the coaching staff all the accolades in the world. Um, we have seen not only an improvement because the team has already eclipsed last year's point total, and we still have games to go.
Mhm.
Suzuki has now got a new career high because he's up to 92 points. Last year was 90.
Yeah.
Caulfield had never scored 40 goals before. Slaff's on the verge of a first 30 goal a year. I mean, these are important milestones because the coach has developed these guys.
Mhm.
These guys didn't come in scoring in massive loads like an Ovechkin. If we got an Ovechkin to come and play for us, and then all of a sudden he scores 50 goals, you're going to say, well, that's just Ovi. He does this all the time.
Mhm.
Our coaching staff has put in, and our management staff has put in together a system where all these guys buy in. It's incredible what we're getting out of these guys.
Yeah. Well, I just want to touch real quick on something here. I'm just sort of, again, this is part of the hodgepodge back and forth discussion. You had mentioned earlier about Dobesh uh, actually passing Carey Price now for rookie wins. Um, and we both know he's got, 4 or 5 games yet potentially to play. Um, I also heard in that podcast they talked about the rookie race. Um, Everybody seems to think Schaefer's going to win it. I don't know. Um, does he deserve it? I listen, between Demidov, Seneca, and Schaefer, I don't think you can really go wrong with either one of them. I think all three of them are deserving winners, and unfortunately, one's got to win. However, it was brought up how Montreal's young team, and I thought about this because you talked about the Keith Pelly interview, how Dobesh is actually entering the conversation right now for winning the Rookie of the Year because he's doing so well.
Well, I think when you look at it, do I think it's Schaefer's to lose? Unfortunately, I do. And the why is this: he's up there in points as a defenseman,
Mhm.
but the downfall of this, he's playing 24 minutes a game. Like
Yeah,
the kid gets a lot of ice. He's
yeah,
getting double the ice time as Demidov.
yeah.
And when you get double the ice time, you get double the opportunity because you don't have to score. You just have to start the puck from your own end. And as long as only two people touch the puck before it goes in the net,
Hmm.
you get the point.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So it could be one breakout pass, turnover to another guy, ends up at the back of the net, and you get a point. You could fart on the puck behind your own net, you get a point if only one guy touches it. Um, so he gets a lot of opportunities. Here's the thing: Montreal. If you look at the top five rookies, you've identified three of them: Demidov, Seneca, and Schaefer. Who would that be? The next two, Dobish and probably Kapanen.
Yeah.
So you've got three of the top five rookies in the hunt playing in Montreal. That's going to split the vote, in my opinion, because Hudson won it last year. Unless Demidov was to run away with it the last 2 weeks and score 10 goals and go on a tear, I think it's Schaefer's to lose.
Yeah.
But we have three rookies that are helping lead the way. I mean,
Yeah.
this is again, it's a downfall to the individual, but if he doesn't win it, at least Demidov can say he won the rookie scoring title. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a small consolation, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and look at it from the other side of it too. Like you mentioned, we've got three uh fantastic rookies this year. I don't think like Kapanen's not in the race, for winning it, but he's still performing with his goals. I think he's got more goals than all of them, does he not?
yeah, yeah, I think he's got 20.
Yeah, so he's got more goals than the rest of the rookies, which again, it's a consolation prize, but it's something. But if you look at uh three rookies this year, so you like you say Hudson last year, I mean, potentially Demidov could win it this year. Realistically, he could. Um, but I seem to agree. I think, Schaefer's to lose. But three rookies this year. But then you look at who's still coming. You got Hage next year for sure is going to be playing. They're talking now that Reinbacher apparently could be called up by the end of the year this year. Apparently he's like killing it in the American Hockey League, doing very well, doing all the right things on both sides of the score sheet or both ends
Can
of
I,
the ice.
do
So
you know if they've reached out to Kirby Doc to loan him some crutches in case he gets hurt if he comes up?
yeah, possible, I guess. I don't know. But they talked about Hage, um, who did I just say?
Reinbacher
Hage, Reinbacher,
and then
Demidov,
Zorovsky.
and then Zorowski. I mean, there's a very, very long shot at the moon that he plays next year, if at all, maybe the end of the year. I don't know. Because I think he's got next year in Russia still too, right? He's got another
Yeah,
year in Russia. So I guess he could come in like Demidov did. He could come in with a couple weeks left in the year next year, unless Montreal does some kind of magic buyout, which who knows? Anything's possible.
it's possible. I'll cut you off right there. I hope we don't do that. I
Mhm.
hope we wait. Um, I really, as much as I want them to buy out and get Zorovsky over here next year, I'd rather, honestly, in a selfish way, wait the one extra year and have him here because then that rolls that 7 year contract gap of rolling over, and building a dynasty of playoffs. I mean, the Red Wings went 20 years in a row making the
Yeah.
playoffs.
But that's how they
That's
did
what
it, though.
that's how they did it. They
Yeah.
rolled over the talent every year, and that talent produced. And then when the old guys got old, the next guys were already there to take over.
Yeah.
That is not something that's happened in Toronto.
Yeah.
They have put all their eggs in one basket. It's win now or else, and we'll worry about the what else next. The
Mhm.
or else has come due, and I'm sorry, but Easton Cowan is your super rookie with like 32 points.
Yeah.
Whoop de doo da day.
I have a mixed emotion on it. I agree with you. I like the idea of extending those 7 year windows. So instead of being in a 7 year contention, you know, Demidov's contract's coming next. So that's going to extend it to 9 years. Then, Hage after that's going to come, and now you're into the 10, 11 year. You know what I mean? So every
Yeah,
time you sign these guys, it's going to stretch on. And then eventually you're going to get back to uh, the original guys, what we would call our core four, Demidov and Suzuki and all that, or sorry, Caulfield and Suzuki and Dobson and all them, where they're going to re-up, and then you're going to have to spend some money and maybe make some tough decisions, but that's not for another 10 years down the road, right? 8 years down
that
the road.
that would be the hope because then you hope the salary cap goes up and you would hope that the management crew stays in line and they keep everybody in that. Let's be honest, 4 years from now, people aren't going to sign for 7 year deals because Suzuki did. They'll be on 10 year deals,
Yeah.
but you hope that they keep their contractual number in alignment with the cost
Yeah.
of what the salary cap has gone up so that we can afford all these guys. And let's be honest, when Suzuki comes due, if he's been the captain of this franchise, and you're talking about milestones right now, I think he's a second current Ironman in the NHL. So
Mhm.
he's been a healthy, reliable,
Touch
sort
wood,
of,
touch wood.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
um, kind of captain, but you hope that he gives you the John Tavares discount at
Mhm.
the end where he says, I want to come back. Just give me a 4-year deal at $6 million
Mhm.
down the road, which, when salaries are 13 and 14, he's signing for that bargain basement to keep the salary cap there and to be part of something. I mean, we have the ability because they've all bought in now to carry that on to be,
Yeah.
like you said, a 10 to 15-year window.
Yeah.
There's no reason why we can't extend this, assuming everybody plays well, everybody stays healthy, and we keep on winning. Because we haven't even touched base on Fowler. Yeah, he's here, but he's barely played.
Mhm.
Is Dobish the guy next year? Yeah, I think you know, this is a Dobish number one goalie position to lose,
Yeah.
unless he absolutely has a Sam Montembeau syndrome. Then I think it's his net next year. But we are set up for not only the front end, not only the back end, but the guys between the pipes are set up
Yeah.
because
Well,
we got a couple of guys in junior and college that are highly ranked.
yeah.
So, that leads a question. What happens when they're all ready to play? We don't have room for them all. At that point, let's be honest. Philippe Deneau will be gone. Texier will be gone. Anderson will probably be gone. Gallagher will be gone.
Moreno.
But you're making room for the next four guys.
Yeah.
So, at the natural progression of the make room, we're not resigning guys to the Thomas Buchanan special where, oh yeah, we love the fact that you know how to shoot a puck at the other team's goalie's chest, so we should bring you back again. We got guys that are, sorry, your time has come. That
Mhm.
is going to be Galley after, if not this summer, it'll be next year. Where unfortunately we just can't give you the thanks for everything you did in 15 years, but it's going to be, if you want a job and you want to join our front office, you can retire now or good luck finding a place to play, but it won't be for us.
And I think that's what sets aside uh, good management teams from great management teams is being able to make that tough decision because we've said it before. There's nobody's given more over the last 20 years for this team than Galley. I mean, maybe Price playing hurt like he did, but nobody did it as hard and did it as long as Gallagher did. And like you say, tough decisions are going to have to be made. And let's be honest, it's going to be a, a ballsy, an elephant balls type size movement to make to say, sorry, Gally, you're not in our plans anymore. It's going to be hard, and that's what's going to separate from being a good management to a great management.
Well, you hope that the player has enough class on his own to recognize that his time has come and it's gone, and he's become an old man in the sport real quick.
Mhm.
It happens, and it happens to all players. Ovechkin isn't Ovechkin compared to what Ovechkin was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
He's still productive. Gallagher is not productive now. He never was Ovi productive, but he's not productive.
In a
Yes,
different
he
way.
goes out there. He
Mhm.
goes out there and he skates hard. There's no debating his effort. It's there. You can look at it. He is trying, but at some point, it can't be. It's got to be. What have you done for me lately? And at 6.5 million for 17 points, sorry, but you're not doing enough for me lately. So you hope he says, I recognize that this team needs to move forward without me. So if you buy me out, I'll retire,
Mhm.
or I'll retire now. If you give me a job in the front office, you hope that that player has that kind of class and wants to be part of something and allow the team to move on so he's not dragged through that in the media because he doesn't need it. I'm sure he doesn't want it, but he definitely doesn't deserve it either way.
Yeah. And I look at it from another point of view. Again, we're just batting the ball around here on different topics, but your discussion of Gallagher made me think of, you talked about front office thing. I think he would be a prime example of a guy that you could uh, retain him in the club, in the team, and make him some kind of a special coach or a special, I don't know what they call it. I know they have him, but where he's a guy, he's on the coaching staff. He wouldn't be on the bench, but he's a guy that would be like a coaching mentor kind of thing where
you could give him a consultant role where,
consultant
well, you know,
role, that type of thing, where
he
he's
could
out
be
and during practices or behind the scenes having discussions with players and saying, hey, if you want to succeed, you need to do this, you need to do that, on the ice, maybe try this, try that kind of thing.
he could be the Western Canada lead scout, where all the scouts report back to him
Yeah.
because he's from the West Coast. You know, he grew up. I think he's from Saskatchewan or somewhere, but he played junior hockey in Vancouver with the Giants. So he's a Western, or maybe he's from Calgary, but he's a Western
I,
Canada boy.
I think
Anyways,
he might be from, British Columbia.
but
Let's
you
see.
can you can give him an ambassador's job out there where he's just the face of the franchise, and he shows up at the hospitals, and he goes around to all the camps, and he still holds value and he's well loved. So you can utilize him for him without the skill.
Mhm.
The skill being that he's well loved. And let's be honest, that's a skill in some markets. So you could definitely utilize him and keep him in the organization. And I think that's something that every player longs for when they're done playing is, what do I do next?
Mhm.
So it would definitely give him a chance to stay in the game and earn a few extra shekels while he's not playing.
Mhm.
And if he ever wanted to get into the coaching part of that, or be a head scout or a European scout or whatever he wanted to do, he would definitely still keep his feet wet in the game and utilize his contacts wherever he happens to go at that point.
Mhm. Edmonton, by the way, is where he's from. And I did know that. I don't know why we had a brain fart. I think we both knew that. Um, what other topics did you want to hit on today? I know we talked.
Well,
I
yeah,
do
we
want to get dive deeper into the Arbor Jacki thing, but I don't know if there's anything else you want to hit on.
Well, we've talked about, the only other thing that we have to be leery of is, in these games, is keeping our heads clean. I'm not saying that we need to turtle and roll over on the ice, but we can't go playing stupid down the stretch,
Mhm.
because injuries now could be detrimental, right? You see a guy like Austin Matthews get hurt. It was a cheap shot. It's part of the game. But why is it part of the game? Because it's allowed to be there,
Mhm.
right? Nobody from the Maple Leafs, when that happened, nobody jumped that guy. We have a team now that's prepared to do that. Suzuki gets against the Islanders. Suzuki gets railed into the corner by Barzal. Everybody's got their gloves off trying to protect Suzuki.
Mhm.
We got to be careful that if that happens, it's one guy coming to his defense, because we don't need 2 or 3 game suspensions, or a guy breaking a knuckle or breaking a wrist trying to be a hero when we're just entering the playoffs.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of a loaded protection policy that we
Yeah,
need to have. We need
yeah.
to be smart about some of our
Got to
decisions.
be, yeah. You got to be,
You know,
you got to be selective and wise about it.
and that's why it's important, as we talk about it, the unicorn position, the zombie apocalypse type mentality. Arbor Jacki could be utilized as this unicorn zombie player.
Mhm.
He did well. Should we be giving him more looks up front?
Mhm.
The answer probably is yes, because he was effective. And
Yeah.
with proper coaching and a little bit of guidance and surrounding him with the right guys, I think he could be extremely vital, because it goes beyond just the, hey, give me 5 minutes. We saw it last night in the game against Tampa. Dobson ends up in the box. Then we have another skirmish. I think it was Gooley ended up in the box. Now we're down 2 D-men.
Mhm.
If Arbor was dressed as a seventh D-man, guess what? Now you got a guy drop back, takes 1 or 2 shifts as a defenseman, allows those guys to get a breather, so we're not workload killing guys that Hudson has to play 28 minutes a game.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem in playing 28 minutes a game, but we do it out of necessity for different reasons. And because we're not smart about it, isn't the one reason.
Yeah.
Again, Jacki could be such an asset because he skates well. Just think, we use Galley on the second power play unit. Why not put Jacki on the second power play unit and say, go stand in front of the net?
Mhm.
You think any guy is going to put a cross check in the back of his back, hoping that he doesn't turn around and knock his teeth out?
Mhm.
It could be, you keep his toughness in there, you keep his boisterous personality in the lineup, and he's every bit of that.
Mhm.
Excuse me. And there's just a lot of upside to keep him in on the roster and in the lineup.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah, it
think
doesn't
that,
make sense. It doesn't make that sense have him sitting in the press box. I never understood that.
yeah,
Right? There was other
and
ways they could have handled it.
he is definitely a player's teammate,
Yeah,
right? Because he just wants the team to win.
yeah,
You know, when they're in the press box and they win a game, he's the first guy. Every guy's giving high fives coming down the hallway,
hmm
going in the dressing room. He's
yeah,
the first guy there. He
yeah,
should be bitter and upset that he's not playing, yet he's there just giving everybody their fives and their flowers
yeah.
because that's the kind of guy he is. He's
Yeah. And
infectious.
and if you listen to the post game interviews after that game where he got the was it 5.5 minutes on a forward shifts, um, I noticed a couple things that glaringly stood out for me. One was, I mean, Jack I said the right things, obviously, like they all do. I just want to be part of the team. I want to contribute. Every hockey player says it. But he said, he goes, look, I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. He goes, I just want to be in the game. He goes, I'd be willing to play forward. He goes, but it's tiring because it's a lot of skating. He said it was a lot more skating, up and down the ice, back and forth than what he's used to on defense, where he can lay back and be a little more reserved with his energy output, right? So he recognized that it's going to take a lot more for him to play the forward position, but he's quite willing to do it. But I think the thing that I like the most about it is the other players, when asked about it, they were excited for him. They thought it was great that he got to play forward. It brought energy to them. It energized the whole team, which is what they need. And you know very well in the back of their minds, they love the idea because they're never going to say it, but in the back of their minds, you got guys like even Hudson, Demidov, Caulfield, Suzuki are saying when he's around, there's less likely somebody's going to fuck with us, right?
Yeah, and one of the traditions that we have post game is the player of the game, and every team does it.
Mhm.
We have the wolf hat. If you've
Mhm.
seen the post ceremonies when they award it, everybody has to the one guy, the last guy to wear it, he awards it to the next guy, and then that guy has to give a speech. In a pretty important game where he only played 5.5 minutes, he was the player of the game and he got the
Yeah,
wolf hat,
yeah,
and he was recognized for being unselfish and doing it. But the fact that he did a good job doing it,
yeah,
that just goes to show that his his ability just to be on the roster and on the ice in the lineup, how important that is and how valuable he
yeah,
is to his teammates, because they all recognize it. They all play a little bit bigger when 72 is roaming the ice,
yeah. And it
right? I
drives
mean,
energy to the other 21, 22 guys. They all feed off of that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that if he's there, Caulfield can maybe drive a net differently, because if someone wipes him out, 72 is going to make sure somebody pays the price.
hmm
You know,
Okay.
um,
Are we,
so it's just important. He needs to be there.
yeah. Okay. Are we ready for final thoughts?
Yeah, we can dig into final thoughts, because I think we've covered a lot of little bits and tidbits and what's happened and what's
Yeah.
next, and we can keep this going, but I think most people probably have a job to go to
The
or something.
Louisiana gumbo is complete. We can move on.
There you go. All the
Okay. What do
ingredients
you
are in.
got? What do you got for final thoughts?
Final thoughts. We're in a precarious situation. Again, we haven't clinched yet. I think it's just a matter of time. Rumblings are that, if we clinch, we could see Reinbacher come up and play a couple of games. Here's my one thought that I hope doesn't happen. I had a conversation with a buddy of mine who runs another Facebook Montreal group, large group. We don't obviously post every discussion in that group, but he says, I can see that if Montreal solidifies and books a spot, that Sam Montembeault plays the last couple of games because he's been a consummate teammate. As much as I want to be a great humanitarian and a great fan, under no circumstance do I want that to happen.
Yeah.
Yes, you could say it's the feel good story and it gives you, he's been there and he's stayed, but it's all about momentum. And I would rather give those extra 2 starts to Fowler, because he's going to be your backup guy, rather than give one of those. If we want to dress Monty those last 2 games, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And if we're up the last game, we're locked into a playoff spot, we want to put him in for the second half of the game, I'm all for it. I don't think we just give him the reins to play 2 games,
Yeah. That'd be
because
foolish.
everything that you've done can come undone just because of mentality. Now, would I like to see Reinbacher play a couple of games? Absolutely. Does that mean Hudson takes a night off, Dobson takes a night off, or Matheson takes a night off? I'm all for it. Let them both take it. Let two of them take a night off.
Mhm.
Dress, Jack and Struble and Reinbach. I mean, we could do that. I think this is an opportunity to do so. And those are the kind of things I'd like to see us gamble with so we know. And then you can accurately know you've got guys on the ready, on the standby, prepared, and know what you're going to get out of them. It would be a small sample size, but like I said, Ryan Bacher has been blowing it up in the AHL and has probably earned at least a 2 or a 3 game audition just to say, yes, thanks for fighting through your injuries and you're a number, fifth pick overall, first rounder. Let's give you some games. So that I hope that's what happens. No to Monty, yes to Ryan Bacher. And we didn't touch base on it, but Mr. Hage, the Michigan Wolverines won. They make it to the final Frozen Four weekend. So if we were hoping that he would be coming this week, that's at least going to be delayed at least another week because that Frozen Four goes next weekend. So we're a week away from that happening. But all things pointing in the same direction. It's nothing but positivity and nothing but upside. And as much as I don't want this season to end, I can't wait for however this season ends. I can't wait for the next one to already start.
Yeah, got a lot to look forward to. I think for me, I think I'm, anticipating again a clinch, you know, sooner rather than later. I see within the next game or two us clinching a playoff spot. Um, Not necessarily, you know, determining the actual placing, but I think a playoff spot will be clinched in the next, probably by Wednesday next week kind of thing. Um, I'm looking forward to seeing, Caulfield get the 50 goals. I think it's a big deal. You get the guy scoring 50, in commemoration of the original 50 Rocket. Um, I think Suzuki can get 100. I see Slav getting 30 goals. Well, I mean, he's already at 29. I just see a lot of individual um, milestones met on a team that, plays for the team. It's nice for them to get their individual rewards as a benefit of that. Um, I see a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of potential moves that are going to stretch things out for us, like we talked about, window advancement, window stretching, and stuff like that. I think basically what it boils down to, the next 2 weeks is going to be some pretty exciting hockey, and it's going to only benefit us when the playoffs come, because right now, this is playoff hockey now because it's do or die for some teams, and they're going to want to, throw everything at us. So it's going to be a good character judgment. And I think the next 2 weeks is going to be exciting. And hopefully the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks, who knows after that, get a uh, pretty good taste of Stanley Cup playoff hockey and really benefit the team long term. So, I think exciting is the key word here. We're
Yeah,
we're in for a
yeah,
good
we
run.
Yeah, we have a lot to look forward to, and that will lead us into we'll throw it out there. Once the season's over, it'll we'll follow it through to the end. But we'll talk about our prospects going into the off season. We'll talk about what went right for us, what didn't go right in a year end review. But we'll get back to the bashing the Leafs in another episode because that's easy targets this time of year. But as far as all things Montreal, it's been the season that I think everybody has really thought it could have been the
Mhm.
way it ended last year and the carryover, and it's been good to see.
Yeah. But you also see a progression, like what we had 92 points last year.
90 points this year. We're up to 98 or
Yeah.
96 with where we're going to go over 100.
But you see
So
the team doing better. You see the players on the teams, their stats are doing better. So you see steady growth and progression, which is what you want. You don't want to have relapses. You don't want to have, certain player tanks and does nothing. Was it a fluke? Where you just see steady progression, steady growth, and that's what makes a team stronger and growing into those long, Stanley Cup windows that we talk about.
Yeah, you don't want it to be a teeter totter where you're up then down, then up then down.
Yeah,
You want it to be the roller coaster. Where you're up then down a little bit, then back up again,
yeah.
thrown in with the odd twist. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's Mr. Saturday Night has led the way. He's made the lights bright. And, it's a great outlook moving forward.
Okay. With that, that's going to conclude our lengthy discussion here on everything Habs. Um, I think we still have a good trivia here for us, Steve.
Trivia question. Yes, last time a Montreal Canadiens team had 100 points in a season was the 2016-2017 season where we had 103 points. So it was only 10 years ago, believe it or not.
Mhm.
So we had a couple of years in the teens where we had 100 points. But a fun fact: the franchise record for points in a season, 1976, 1977. Believe it or not, we reeled off 132 points one year, which is just absolutely insane. And
Mhm.
you and I talked about this when we were talking about the trivia and how important it was. That was back in the day where if the game ended in a tie, there was no bonus points on the table. Game
Mhm.
was 3-3 after 60. You went home.
Yeah.
Dump your popcorn, take it in your pocket. 3-3 was the final. Now teams are getting bonus, 5 extra bonus minutes or a shootout to try and get extra. And if you don't win, you still get a point.
Yeah.
The bonus points that are on the table are absolutely
Yeah.
incredible. And we reeled off 132 points.
Yeah.
Just absolutely insane in an 80 game season.
Yeah, but I don't even think I don't even think it was an 80 game season back then. I
Might have
think
been a 78. Might have been a
no, I
78 game
think it
season.
was even less. I think it was 70, 72 games. I'd have to check that out, but the point is, you're right. It was less games played and less points available because of, no bonus points for OTs and stuff like that.
Right. And we take for granted that those bonus points are there because you and I have said it time and time again. Well, wasn't the outcome we wanted, but at least we got a point.
Mhm. Yeah,
You know,
really. Yeah.
or hey, we pulled that one out, we got the extra point.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you would have just got the point and that would have been it.
Mhm.
Simple. A game ends in a tie, and you just would have been done with it.
Yeah.
So kind of one of those bonus things, but again, it's a different world we live in,
Yeah.
and it was an 80 game season back then.
Okay. All
Quick
righty.
quick cell phone research.
Yeah. So that'll pretty much conclude today's episode. I think it was pretty good discussion. We hit on all kinds of topics, and I'm pretty impressed we kept it under an hour. You should see how we do this offline. We go on for hours and hours and hours.
We'll
But yes,
condense it to an hour.
yeah. So just want to say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, hit the like, share, subscribe button, comment, let us know what you think, reach out to us, and don't be shy. Remember, subscribe and hit the like button. And as my friend Steve always says,
Keep your stick on the ice.